Hey guys, my name is Octoman and today we are going to create a swipe rotation for our camera. So if you have a world where you want to look around, I'm going to demonstrate this, then you have the possibility to do so. We are using some easy scripting. I'm going to demonstrate this one. As you can see right now, I'm touching or swiping around on my tablet. I have connected with Unity, so I can go from the left to the right, from right to the left, down to up and up to down. And this is what we're going to produce. It's just something which is actually manipulating. Gonna show you this in the game scene. Just manipulating the camera by just dragging around, or basically doing swipes on your smartphone, on your tablet, whatever. So let's get into that pretty quick. I'm going to create a new scene. Basically I don't need, but just for the sake of competition, and we're going to create a new C# script, and I just call this one, I don't know, swiper. Since I have a swipe rotation script in here already, then they won't mess up with each other. How did I show you that? I use Unity Remote. Unity Remote is not supported anymore and not actually gone forward into newer versions, so you may have some problems by setting this one up, or actually it may crash several times when you try around. Okay, what I want to do is I want to create an empty game object for my scene. I just don't need to reset or anything. It's just going to be my placeholder for my touch control. So I just call this one here touch controller, and what I do also is I add the swiper script to it, so I have access directly in the scene. So make sure it is in your scene and the script is attached to it, since we still inherit from mono behavior. So let's open this one up pretty quick. And there we go. So what we need is, basically we can do this in update, and I believe also in fixed update. So we are going to maybe try this one in fixed update. If this is not working as we want, then we just go over and use update instead. So I'm going to end my tablet pretty quick, and let's get started. So we need several variables for this one. So the first one we may want to go over as all the rotation stuff, and also touch. So at first, let's start with the touch itself. We need a private touch, and this is going to be our initial touch. So I call this one just init touch, and this is going to be a new touch. So we just set a touch to anything. There are several tutorials outside, I believe, about touches and swiping and all the other things. So everyone is doing it different. So you need to know, or you need to see what is fitting your project the best. Okay, so let's get forward. What we do need is we need to know what actually are we touching, or basically if there is any touch. So I want to loop through any touch we have. So we say just for each, and then we just say touch. So for each touch we call this touch with a small letter t, and we want to know or want to get the input of all the touches, and we store it like that. So for each touch we want to, oops, there was a bracket. For each touch we want to make sure if or in which touch state we are. So we have 3 states we want to make sure about. So the first one is going to be touch, which is actually the current touch, or basically any touch, dot phase, and we want to get or want to know what kind of touch phase are we in. So if we have a touch phase of touch phase dot began, if this is the beginning of a touch, so the first touch actually of the current touch we are doing on our screen, then we want to initialize our touch. So we set init touch to touch. Since the touch we are just doing, we store in touch we just created in here. So we just initialize this one and say this is our current touch, basically. So if this is not going to be or this touch is not going to be in the beginning phase, then we want to see in which phase is it then if it's not in there. So what we want to do is we want to check if the touch we just did are in the phase of touch phase moved. So if we have moved anything or moved that current touch or that touch we just checking, I know it's a bit different, bit complicated, but I tried to explain the best I can. Then we want to do our swiping action. So everything what is has to do with swiping is going to end up in the moved touch phase. And then we also have another touch phase we need to check, which is touch phase. Touch dot phase is going to be equal to touch phase ended. So if our touch we just had has ended, then what we want to do is we want to reset our current touch, or basically our initialized touch, to a new touch. So we don't have any problems with all that stuff. So this is the base of all the touches we want to handle, or basically the incoming touch. Okay, basically or normally people use just one touch. Instead of using a for each loop, you may want to go over and just use the first touch, so which is going to be input.touches and then square brackets just 0. So this is going to be the first touch. You decide what you want to do. I just loop through any touch and check the states of them. Okay, this may come later on, or will maybe later on we'll have some trouble with that, but you will check and see, and I will test this one out too. Okay, what the next thing is, we need of course a camera. So we want to swipe around. So I just create. I just say camera, and this is going to be my cam. Nothing special with that. And now we need some stuff for the touch itself. So we need a float variable. I'm going to set this one to private, since it's not needed to be readable from outside. It's going to be a float. And what I want to do is I want how shall I say, it's going to be a rotation basically on one axis. So basically an X rotation or a Y rotation. What I'm going to do is I just call this one just rot X, which is going to be rotation X. You can call it whatever you want. Then I also want a private float for the Y, so we're gonna use rotation or rot Y. In my case, we don't need to set them. Basically, they will start at 0, but you can also go over and write in 0 F in here. F stands for float, so if you're working with floats, make sure floats or the F is inside. The next thing is we want an overall or an original rotation state, and we want to store this one in a vector 3. So since we have 3 rotation axes, so we say private vector 3, and this is going to be my original rotation. So I just call this one orig_rot, which is going to store all the current rotation of the object, or basically of our camera. So in start, we will go over and set this original rotation to the camera rotation. Also, we need 2 more, which can be public, since we may want to change this one while we are playing around, or will give the player the ability to handle something inside. So what we want to do is we want a speed variable, which is going to be our rotation speed. You can call the speed or rot speed. And I start to set this one to 0.5 f, since it's really fast, or will be really fast the higher the numbers are, of course. Also, I want a direction. The direction if you want later on the player to invert the direction of the camera movement, then you can decide him to give the possibility, and we start, or I start, with -1. This value only is going to be -1 or 1. We just basically needs a minus or a plus in front of that number. The number itself won't affect anything. No speed, no nothing. Just we want to make sure that we can invert that number, and we'll already or also invert the whole progress with that direction thing. Okay, so let's initialize our rotation. So we're gonna take the origin rotation, and this is going to be the cam.transform rotation. No, not rotation, it's going to be transform.Euler-angles. So that angles of all three axes will be stored in that vector 3, which is origin rotation. So, and what we want to do now is we want to take that x and y value we want to manipulate later on and store them in the rotation x and y value. So what we do is we say rod x, again, rod x is going to be equal to cam.transform dot no, not cam transform, it's going to be origin, since we already stored this one. So we say origin or original rotation dot x, and same for rod y. Rod y is going to be equal to origin rotation dot y. So now we have that both axis angles, basically both Euler angles, and stored them in origin x and origin y, or basically from them and inside of rod x and rod y. So now we can basically go and use those variables and transform our camera or rotate our camera around those axes depending on the touch direction, basically. The next thing is we want to calculate the position we are going to and go or coming from, and depending on that delta, basically delta position, we want to do our camera. Yeah, we want the rotation depending on the touch we are doing on the screen. So if we are swiping from the middle point of your screen to the top right, we need to store x and y values and calculate the distance between the began touch and the current position of the movement phase, so we can translate this into the camera rotation. I know it's a bit complicated. So let's get started and have it done. So what we want to do, we create a float variable in here for our delta x position. And this position is calculated by our initialized touch. So the first point we touched, position.x, since we only want the x-axis for the delta x. And we want to say we want the difference between that initialized position we just created in here and the current touch position dot x, which is touch is going to be this one, which is stored inside of that. So the same one we want to do is for the y value. So delta y, we create another variable or a float variable for delta y, since we also need the y position of that. So we say input dot position initialized touch dot position dot y minus the current touch position dot y. So we store them to have basically a distance, or the distance delta between those, or a delta position. So we calculated all that things. So what we want to do now is we want to take that values and put them into the rotation x and rotation y. What we want to do is at first we go over and use rotation x, and this we decrease or increase, or basically in this case we decrease from the current rotation x we just created in start, and we decrease the rotation x, the current Euler angle, by the delta x. But this is not going to be enough, since this will just be pretty weird, I believe, pretty fast. So what we want to do is to have everywhere on every phone or any device, we want to make sure that we divide all that stuff by time.delta time at first. So this will be the same speed on any device you are in. Also, we want to have a speed value which we just created for the rotation speed, because we need to add up stuff. So we can say how fast do we want to how fast do we want to rotate, and also we want to have the direction inside we just created in here, which is going to be a negative direction currently. I'm going to show you the difference later on. Okay, same is going to be for rotation y, so rot y, but in this case we add to the rotation y. I'm going to use the delta y times again delta time.delta time times the rotation speed, since we just use one speed, and times the direction again. If you don't want to affect the direction for this one, then you can just go over and just get rid of that part if you don't want any direction inside, or don't want the player to have the ability in the options to change the direction to negative or positive, or basically just to flip the rotation. What else? Well, now we need to translate everything onto the camera. And later on we may want to go and clamp that camera already or again. Okay, so now we take our cam.transform.Euler angles and we say we want to push all that calculated data inside that Euler angles. So what we do is we create a new vector 3 once again and take at first rotation x in the x-axis or on the float x. Then in float y on the y-axis we're gonna input the rotation y value we just calculated. And in z we just don't do anything, we just leave this at 0, since we have no z-axis rotation. If you have anything else like top-downs and stuff and your camera is going to be pretty weird or I don't know, then fiddle around with the values and you will be good to go. You may just go over, if you want to use the z-axis, then you may want to calculate all that stuff a bit different. Okay, so let's save this stuff, and this should be it. So what we have done right now is we stored the current rotation in origin rot x, or in the origin or in the original rotation. Then we took out the current x and y values. Then we created the delta distance for the x and y value, and also we added subtracted the current rotations by the delta values basically, and also we did that in speed and in a specific direction by the running time, and then we translated all of that angles inside of the camera angles by its values we just calculated before. So that's in its basic. This should be it. What I want to do right now, I want to create a small a scene, let's say, and add some cubes. Let me reset that cube so we can see them. Maybe I'm going to drag this one around a bit. Gonna duplicate this by Control D and so on. Now, make sure that you create your scene, or just you have your game done already. This is just for demonstrating purposes. So on my touch controller I just created in the beginning, I need to drag in the camera I want to use. And as you can see, the rotation speed and the direction can be added and decreased with time. From outside. So any other script or your options and so on can just go and add up or change those values. So let me start Unity Remote. Again, Unity Remote is a bit picky since it's pretty much outdated. Let me find this pretty quick and let's test out what we have done in here. So let's start. I hope it's not going to crash. Looks good. So I go from the right to the left. Oh, the ankles are wrong. We need to. I'm going to show you this one in just a second. So if I go up and down, let me show you this one. If I go up and down, you can see I have the axes are wrong. So we need to go in and change change the delta x. So the rotation x is going to be manipulated by delta y, and the rotation y is going to be manipulated by delta x. So make sure you don't miss that. Going to try this one out once again. This is not going to work since Unity Remote again has crashed. So let me quickly restart Unity Remote and I will show you this one again. Okay, let's start. There we go. So from right to left, I can see it's working pretty good. And I can swipe around. I can go from up to down with just swiping around, and from left to right. Now I swipe from right to left. Now from left to right. This is from right to left, from left to right, from up to down, and from down to up. That's it. Basically, a pretty simple one. You may want to make sure that the player is not going over a specific ankle. This means you don't want him to. Let's see if I can. No, it's crashed again. You don't want the player to go over the 90 degrees angle on the top and in the bottom. Maybe 80% or an angle of 80 is going to be enough. So what you can do is you can clamp the rotation x and rotation y values before you go and do the translation on the camera. So I'm going to show you this one pretty quick. So what we can do is we can clamp with that with massf.clamp. So we can say rodx, I believe this should no massf.clamp. Whoops. And now we can say what kind of value we want to clamp. In our case, it's going to be the rotation x value, comma, and then what's the minimum? In my case, the minimum is going to be maybe minus 80. Oops. Don't forget the f again, since it's a float value. And of course, the maximum is going to be 80f. Close that. So now we clamp rotation x in that angle. You don't want to do this in the y-axis because this has a 360 degrees rotation. If you want to clamp this one too, because of your game needs that, then you just can go over and clamp this, of course. So no, Unity Remote again crashed. Gonna start this one once again. Okay, so let's test this one out. I go up and more up. More up. Okay, I believe this was the wrong one. Okay. Let's see if just the ankle has been wrong. Okay, that's funny. I'm gonna go and check this clamping stuff pretty quick, and I believe I will be back in just a second, basically for you. Oh yeah, of course, I need to say rodx is going to be equal to massive clamp dot, this should work. Okay, again, going to and restart Unity Remote, of course. Okay, there we go. And let's see if this works right now. And now you can see it is clamped. It's not going over that ankle. Now we go down. And it's not going on over that ankle, as you can see. This also should work in the other direction. Let's swipe a bit around. There we go. So if we go straight up. Yes. So even if you only want the player to be in a 45 degrees angles, or the as maximum and minimum, you can just go over in here and clamp it into 45 degrees. Let's test this one out once again. Gonna restart while it's compiling. Okay, so let's swipe up. Now you can see it's 45 degrees, so 315 rotation minus the 45 is, plus 45 is going to be 360. So this is the clamping. Let's go down. 45. I hope this is. Let me just swipe a bit around. Okay, let's test this again. There we go. There's a 45 degrees going straight up. 45 degrees. And yeah, you can look around and do all that stuff. Okay, so that's it for my swiping tutorial. I hope you learned something. I hope this is going to be helpful in any way. Feel free to ask me about that stuff. I hope I explained this as good or good enough for you to know what's going to happen in here. And what I wanted to check is, of course, if there are more touches on the screen. I didn't test this one out before, so let me restart remote once again, and let's see when I have one touch on the screen and I could now swipe around. If I have another touch on the screen, which is, I have 2 touches right now, I can use, I believe, yes, I can use all the fingers and swipe around. It's going to be pretty weird, but I can use two touches, and this way it's going to be faster, basically, I believe. Where are we? Yeah, maybe the speed is going to add up, but no matter how many touches are on the screen, the swiping will work with all fingers. So which we just created with which we just use for the for each. Again, if you want to if you only want to use one finger touch, then you can just say input the touches, and then you say like so. You can say only the first touch index, which is going to be 0 in this case, but don't use this in a for each loop. Okay, so save the script, and yeah, that's it. So I hope this is going to work in any way for you and for everything you are going to do. Yes, again, I hope you learned something and enjoyed that small tutorial. Yeah, again, if you have any questions, don't forget to write me in the comments or a private message if you don't want to, people see your comments. Don't forget to sum this video up if it was helpful in any way for you, and of course, subscribe to my channel if you haven't already. So, see you in the next tutorial. Bye bye.